All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the November 12th meeting of the Olympic Region Clean Air Agency. Let's go ahead and do introductions for the record. I think that we'll still have a couple more folks join us while we're doing this. But I'm Jim Cooper from the city of Olympia. Mike,
Mike French, Clallam County Commissioner. Good morning.
Joan,
Joan Cathy, Tumwater City Council.
morning, Randy,
Randy Nevlin, Mason County Commission.
Georgia,
Georgia Miller, Grace Harbor County Commissioner.
and Emily.
Emily Klaus, Thurston County Commissioner.
Great. Jeff, can you take us through your team?
Sure, absolutely. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jeff Johnston, Executive Director from Olympic Region Clean Air Agency, and joining me here in the conference room, Mike Schultz, Compliance Manager, Odell Hadley, Senior Air Monitoring Specialist, Tyson Justice, Financial Services Manager, Tiffany Flores, Record Specialist, ORCAA's Public Records Officer, and taking minutes for us this morning. And Debbie Moody, Operations Manager. And then upstairs in his office, Dan is running Zoom, and Chris Kraus, ORCAA's Systems Administrator, is also listening in.
Okay, and Jeff Myers and your team.
Jeff Myers, legal counsel from Law Lyman, and I'm solo today.
Great, welcome. And Greg.
Hi, sorry for my tardiness. Greg Brotherton, Jefferson County Commissioner and Vice Chair.
I'm glad you showed because I don't have notes for the next thing, which is you. So I'm glad you're here. All right, let's see. We're looking for a motion to approve the agenda for this morning.
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any amendment or discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. That takes us to our chair reports, and I'll go to Greg with the Finance Committee update.
Great. Thank you very much. We had a good Finance Committee meeting today, as usual. Tyson, despite being on jury duty, did a great job in preparing our first quarter report for fiscal year 26, which I'll summarize here. And if anyone has any questions, I'll probably pass it to Jeff and Tyson, honestly. But, we had a really good first quarter. Part of it was there were, again, which we don't plan for, a higher number than budgeted of penalties, so we're quite a bit over that budget revenue item already. And we basically added $104,000 to the fund balance in the first quarter, which is a great to have a net positive. And we're at 28% of expenses for the quarter. 20th of the year would be 25%. But we've done some significant projects already, including purchase of an EV and setting up 2 EV chargers for the infrastructure for that. So all in all, a really good first quarter. We'll be coming back in January in the Finance Committee to talk about the core grant from both the feds and the state, which accounts for about 7% of ORCAA's, too many meetings, ORCAA's annual budget. And there's a lot of talk and not a lot of answers. It's clear that the state core grant will go down probably at least 65%, I believe. And the Fed is shrouded in shadows right now, so who knows? But we'll be coming back in January with more up-to-date report based on Jeff's analysis and continuing discussions. And that, unless I missed something or anyone has any questions, concludes the Finance Committee's report.
Okay. Good description of the current federal landscape. I like that. Shrouded in shadows. Okay. Then the next thing is the December board meeting. So I was not sure. Jeff, do you have timeline details to talk, or do you want me to just talk this through?
Well, I mean, I'm happy to talk about kind of what we've got in store for the December meeting. I mean, and I think you kind of foreshadowed that we were trying to put things together to have an in-person meeting in December. Again, according to the board bylaws, that we try to get together in person, goal of twice a year. We haven't met that. The last time actually we met in person was April of last year, so it's been a while. But at one point in the past year, when we were talking about the upgrades to the Lacey monitoring shelter, one of the board members expressed an interest of a tour of that. And so And that project has gone very well, as you'll hear a little bit more about during this meeting. And so we've arranged, cleared it with the North Thurston County School District to have board members and some others at a small event shortly following the December board meeting. So again, our board meeting the goal is have as many of you here in person in Olympia as possible for the December meeting. Then we'll have a short lunch break. We'll have a catered lunch, and then head over to Lacey for a meeting there about 1 o'clock, probably last about 30 minutes or so. Some remarks, get to tour, get to see the Lacey site, see some of their monitoring instruments, see some of the data. So that's kind of what we have planned, I think, for December. But it would be really nice to have, again, we're working on a lunch, and Tiffany's working on that, and a head count would be really helpful. Again, it doesn't have to be final, but to get an idea of how many folks think that they would actually be here at the December meeting, so we can move forward with getting some lunch ordered.
Greg?
That's just me raising my hand for the lunch. I'll be there.
Okay.
Okay, one lunch. I'll be there.
I saw a thumbs up from Mike. Looks like he'll be there. Great.
Okay, Georgia, yes. Hopefully Joan and Randy and Emily as well. So awesome. And the only other note is at that meeting, we will be having an election to fill our chair position, and I'll send out my resignation sometime before the packet comes out, so you all know that's coming, and then we'll get a chair in place until the next reorganizational meetings, which I think are in April.
April is our annual meeting where. Yeah,
Hey, Jim, has anybody told you how awesome you are lately?
That's the only fun part about the farewell tour, Randy.
A quick question. The meeting is scheduled for December 10th at 10 a.m. How long do you expect that to go? Because I have the 12 p.m. Board lunch and field trip. Is it still going to be starting at 10 and then to 1, 2?
Yeah, so the board meeting will start at 10 a.m. as usual, and again, we'll see how long. I mean, our meetings, just looking ahead, we don't have a lot on the agenda. So for December, my guess is an hour and a half is kind of typically how long our meetings have been going. So that'll give us some time for some lunch. Then we'll head over to Lacey, probably around 12:30, 12:45 or so, probably for a 1 o'clock start there. We will have some guests, some folks from ecology and some other places will be joining us as well. So we'll have a 1 o'clock start there, and that'll probably last about 30 minutes or so is my guess, depending upon how long folks are interested, how many questions folks have for Odell and Rob to talk about the monitoring equipment and how much you want to see, and probably the weather too. Hopefully, let's hope for a dry day. Because it is mostly outdoors and there is no covered play shelter or anything at there. So so my guess is from 1 to 1:30 or so for that, and then head back to Montesano or Port Townsend, Port Angeles, probably after that.
Okay.
Odell and her team have been hard at work on shelters this year, so it'll be great to see the fruits of that labor.
Yes, indeed.
Awesome. Okay, anything else on that? I see, Emily, that was a lunch order hand, just to make sure.
I do have a pretty packed day that day, but I'll prioritize the field trip with ORCAA, but I might have some adjustments. So if I have to figure that out, I'll let somebody know, but I'll prioritize this over my other meetings and see if I can move my other ones around.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Move on to public comment. Dan, do we have anybody signed up or anyone in the room?
Nobody online.
Any communications we should know about in the last month?
No.
Okay, great. Thank you. So that takes us to our consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So, or second.
Okay, I got 3 motions in a second. So we're going to give it to Greg and then Mike. And any questions, comments, or polls? Hearing none, all in favor of the consent calendar, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, that takes us to new business item 1, which is ORCAA public meeting policy. Jeff.
Okay, great. Well, thanks. Let me provide just a little bit of context on this. So other local air agencies have experienced some disruptive behavior at some of their recent board meetings. And so after hearing from the other air directors, I just thought, well, it'd be nice to be proactive about this and establish a clear public meeting policy for the board and to share with the public, just to be transparent on how we conduct our meetings and our expectations regarding decorum and civility at our meetings. And so Dan drafted the document that was part of the packet that was shared, and kind of based on what other agencies have done, based on some MRSC recommendations. Again, the idea is that if we've got something like this in place, describing how we handle things at meetings, then we'll be in better shape and on firmer ground if we have to remove people from meetings and that kind of thing. So that was the just wanting to put something in place. If the board is okay moving forward on this, then I think we would include it as part of the board packet, or as part of the board handbook, I'm sorry, part of the board handbook. And then we would also could link to it from meeting agendas, and probably also link it maybe to the board webpage, just to, again, make sure that it's out there for folks.
Okay. Questions about the meeting policy? Mike?
So in the policy, you talk about using the waiting room or the lobby in Zoom or Teams. And that makes sense. What we experienced at Clallam County is people that would join our meeting, and then because they had access to their own microphone and video, they would be disruptive. So we moved to, I think on Zoom, it's called a webinar rather than a meeting, just as that gives you a lot more control over who can unmute their microphone and when. And basically that allowed people to participate in our meetings as visitors. I don't know what the term is in Zoom or Teams. And then they could, request to raise their hand to request to unmute during public comment. So that's just a thought or suggestion. I think this is a great proactive step. I totally support it. And it looks like all of these policies you have pulled very clearly from, places like MRSC that provides just really, good guidance. So that's my only suggestion, is to look into the webinars. That's what Clallam County has moved to.
That
Do you
is
have like
something.
panelists instead of everyone in the same spot? Okay.
Yeah, that is something that
attendees.
Dan and I have talked about. The subscription costs are a little bit higher for the Zoom instance of, so for the webinar version. And so we've gone back and forth, is that an extra expense that we should incur at this point? Or again, maybe we won't have an issue, but thank you, Mike, that's a good suggestion. We'll continue to, and if folks have thoughts about whether or not that's worth it. And Dan, I don't know if you remember what the cost difference off the top of your head is. But
I don't. There's a couple different tiers I looked at, but it's not astronomical, but it is a increased cost. And given the number of public that shows up at these, we typically haven't seen a need.
Public would be a good problem to have first, right? Greg?
yes.
Yeah, having been Zoom bombed this very week with an insecure one, once they do get in, I think Mike is absolutely right. So it maybe we shouldn't put into policy the specific tool that we're going to use, but the general concept for that, so a waiting room is less secure than attendee panelists in a webinar. So putting waiting room in there, which isn't the best, I don't know. I guess that's too specific, I think, to be in the policy is what I'm saying. We should maybe rephrase that. Section 2 of the policy.
I'm just trying to find the spot. Let's see, Dan, I think maybe it'd be good to just put it on the screen if you can, since we're talking edits. Thank you.
So maybe something like virtual public meetings should use controls to maintain separation between attendees and meeting participants or something like that.
I like that.
You might also say, such as the waiting room or webinar functions in Zoom and the lobby function in Teams. So that it's just examples of what people might expect.
There you go. Good. Dan, are you in a place where you can edit in real time, or what's the best way to track this?
No, this is a PDF. I mean, we've got the recording and I'm taking notes, so.
Okay.
Once you approve the language, I'll make sure it's pulled from the recordings.
Okay. So unless it gets more complicated than this, we'll do a motion that is as discussed. Mike, your hand is up again.
Yeah, on the Zoom bombing, what we experienced was a coordinated attack where multiple people were coming in and out of the meeting, which made it really difficult for whoever was, behind the mouse to right click on their name and move them into a waiting room. And so, they have tactics that are in some cases immune or make it extraordinarily difficult to use the less secure options. So, I think it's great that we haven't experienced it. From personal experience, it's not a fun thing to experience. I think it's really smart to be proactive. I don't necessarily think I want to say, let's spend a bunch of money without, investigating options. I don't know if you all use Teams regularly. I know that, we're on a Zoom meeting right now. Often Teams already has this functionality. And if you use Microsoft 365, you might already have similar functionality. Then you just have to figure out how to transition to Teams, which in and of itself is not fun. So I'm personally not, I think that the edits that Greg made make total sense. Keep your options open. I'm fine with, moving forward today. I don't want to make us spend money without really doing the full investigation. I just want to provide the experiences that we've had, which have not been fun.
Thank
The
you.
lessons that
Randy?
we've learned.
Right. Yeah, something about meetings in Clallam County, but we can talk about that offline. Randy.
Yeah, I know, in reading that, I don't see anything that would prohibit us from doing that if we chose to do it later. This
Right.
is not something that has a prohibitive sanction to it. So I think it's fine just the way it is. As we work towards being a better organization on how we handle it internally, when we get to the point to where that's actually needed, if we decide, no, it'll always be done that way, we can have them put in.
Any other comments? Georgia?
Let me get back to the sentence that I'm just a little struggling with. The rules of decorum and civility, underneath that, it says, people attending a public meeting must not act in any way that makes it impossible to continue the meeting properly. I think impossible is an opinion. And so it just seems like language, I mean, words matter. So it just feels like that language is very broad. Maybe something along the lines of participants in a public meeting are expected to conduct themselves in a respectful and orderly manner that allows the meeting to proceed efficiently and without disruption.
Okay.
I mean, just impossible, the word impossible, really subjective.
Yeah. Yeah, I went to more difficult in my head or difficult instead of impossible, but then I liked your edit better. So let's see if anybody has any issues with that, but it seems to make sense. Randy.
Yeah, there's RCW language that we should probably use. We're going to do that because that makes perfect sense. We're allowed, even in a commission meeting, to handle it according to the RCW in a certain manner when something occurs, it becomes disruptive.
Cool.
And so we should use language that's already in existence. We're going to do it.
Okay. Mike?
So for Dan, who's taking notes, that's RCW 42.30.050. And the language it uses is unfeasible.
Oh, okay. That's good too. That's not subjective. Okay. Okay. Randy, is that another question or same? Okay. Dan, are those all clear? Tracking 2 changes.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we've got them.
Okay, anything else? Okay, then I'm looking for a motion to adopt the new Olympic Region Clean Air Agency public meeting policy as discussed.
So moved.
Sorry.
Second.
Okay, yeah.
A motion from Emily, a second from Georgia. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Jeff and team.
Great, thank you. And I can bring back to the board at our December meeting, we'll look at the costs involved. And I hear, Mike, your suggestion about being proactive on this. And I've heard that experiences can be pretty bad. And so if it's a nominal cost to upgrade to the webinar, it's probably a worthwhile investment. But anyway, I'll bring that back to the board just to let you know kind of where we stand and what those cost differences are.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, that takes us to new business item number 2, which is a fun way to honor a former employee and also might be a little bit sad for people who knew him really well. I had the chance to know Jimmy Werner for just a few minutes before he left the organization, just as I was coming on board back in like 2012 or something like that, if I remember right. But I have some really great biographical information that the staff pulled out around Jimmy's service, and I wanted to just read that, and then we'll look at the resolution and consider this really exciting opportunity to name the new shelter at Mountain View Elementary in Lacey after James P. Warner. It's a really cool opportunity, given that him and Robert built the original shelter that was there. But let me just find my notes so I can do well on this. Jimmy P. Warner. Jimmy was hired as a lab technician for ORCAA in 1981. ORCAA had its own lab where air sample filters were conditioned and weighed. When the Department of Ecology took over the lab work statewide, Jimmy expanded this role into air quality specialist, inspector, while continuing to develop and run ORCAA's air monitoring network. He found and negotiated placement for air monitors in Lacey, Shelton, Port Angeles, Port Townsend, and Aberdeen. For 30 years, he led ORCAA's monitoring program and was an integral part of and mentor to many ORCAA employees working on air monitoring projects. In 2007, he applied for and received a federal grant to install and operate the NC Core site above Neah Bay. The NC Core site was fully operational by January 1st, 2010. ORCAA continues to receive an annually between $86,000 and $100,000 in grant funding from the EPA. He developed an enduring relationship with the Makah tribe, running the Chesapeake NCORE site, and assisted the tribe with their air monitoring program. Upon his retirement in 2012, he was honored by Makah tribe with a plaque acknowledging his contributions. Jimmy was an avid hiker, hunter, skier, forager, and fisherman. He was well loved and deeply respected by all his colleagues. He didn't like public speaking, but loved sharing stories, and one-on-one, he was very gregarious. He was kind and patient mentor and never blamed or judged his intern or trainee for costly and silly mistakes. Jimmy passed away unexpectedly in June of 2025. In 1992, he and Robert Moody built the air monitoring shelter at Mountain View Elementary School. That shelter has housed numerous particulate, gaseous, meteorological, and toxic data collection over its 33-year lifespan. Ecology has used the shelter as a testing platform for new technology and instrumentation. When ORCAA retired the building this summer, it was removed in one piece and will be repurposed as a well house. This speaks to the quality of the structure and the skill of the carpenters. We want to name the new shelter for Jimmy to honor his integral role in creating ORCAA's air monitoring program and the training and mentorship he provided his successor, which plays a critical role in her daily job function. So a person who provided a lot for our community and our organization over 30 years. I wanted to just take a moment before we consider the resolution and see, I know at least Joan, Kathy's been here longer than me, and a few staff members who had a chance to work. No, maybe not Joan. Okay. And a few staff members who have had a chance to work with Jimmy. If there's anything you'd like to say about him and his service or a story you'd like to tell.
Well, I'll do something for the record here because I think it's important. I started in 2005 and 6-7 months into that, he took me under his wing to be a backup for the Aberdeen and Raymond sites, and not a nicer guy out there. And when you talked about those, calm demeanor, even when mistakes are made, I made a few, and some, back in the old days, we had to download everything to a laptop and then bring it back home. It didn't come back here by itself, or electronically. And so many times I bring him a laptop with data that I downloaded, but I could not find. And I know he spent several times trying to fix that and pull it out, and not a nicer guy to do that. Never got on my case, just kept trying to teach me how to do the computer right. And very good guy. Patient.
Awesome. Okay. Well, it sounds like we've invited his family to the dedication, so I don't know if they're going to be able to make it. Do we know that, Jeff?
No, so I don't think we've heard back from them yet. We were until the board went forward with, we were hoping you were going to approve the resolution, but until today, knowing where this vote was going to go, we were kind of holding off on a whole lot. We've got stuff in place, but we wanted to wait until after today, knowing where the board was going to go on this before we did a whole lot more on it.
Okay,
So.
that makes sense. Okay. So then I am looking for a motion to approve Resolution 287, authorizing the dedication of the new air quality monitoring station at Mountain View Elementary School in Lacey, Washington as the James P. Werner Air Quality Monitoring Station. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion from Greg and a second from Emily. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And thank you, staff, for this great idea. It's a really a good one, and I'm glad that we could honor that service.
Yes.
We're gonna need more. We're gonna need more monitoring shelters, but
Yeah.
Okay.
No, the way the timing has come together on this, and I'm really excited about being able to honor Jimmy next month, and we're glad that a lot of you are going to be able to be there in person for the event and to see the new monitoring station. So
Yeah.
thanks to Odell for a lot of work that's gone into the effort.
Yeah, thank you, Odell. Can't wait to see it. Okay, so moving on to unfinished business, we're going to talk about outdoor burning, maybe for the last time this year. We'll see. Turn it over to
Well,
Jeff.
Okay, great. Well, Dan, if you could bring up the slides, please. And while Dan's doing that, let me just kind of give a little bit of an intro here. So again, picking up on a topic that we've been talking about for a number of months. Again, just to kind of recap briefly. So a board request, staff brought a proposal to the Finance Committee and the full board in August regarding expanding our residential burn notification system beyond Thurston County to the other 5 counties in ORCAA's jurisdiction. So back in August, we had a number of questions and concerns about the proposal. So we hit the pause button to give us more time for discussions. There were a variety of questions related to ORCAA's authority, related to what we were proposing, why we were proposing it, some of the problem that we were looking to solve, the costs in terms of managing an outdoor burn program, and others that just kind of just to name a few. So then last month at the October meeting, Mike and Dan presented some information about ORCAA's authorities, talked about the State Clean Air Act, the RCW, the WAC, the ecology rules, and then ORCAA's own regulations. And then they also talked about some of the differences in different counties in terms of ORCAA's relationship with the different fire officials, what we delegate to different agencies, and so on. Because there are a lot of differences between ORCAA's 6 counties. So today's discussion is to continue this deep dive into ORCAA's regulations related to outdoor burning, especially residential burning. So next slide, please, Dan. So before I get into the specifics of ORCAA's regulation of outdoor burning, just a quick reminder about ORCAA's mission and why we do what we do. ORCAA is not a health agency, but the reason we exist is to protect public health. Exposure to air pollution, including smoke from outdoor burning, is associated with a wide variety of health issues. This slide is from a presentation I saw last month from Dr. Meredith McCormick at Johns Hopkins University. Actually, I'm in conversation with Dr. McCormick about joining an upcoming board meeting in 2026 to do a deeper dive on looking at the relationship between air pollution and health impacts such as asthma, COPD, heart disease, dementia. And folks probably have seen, there's more and more information coming out on this. This is not a topic, I'm going to go back to outdoor burning in just a sec, but I just wanted to establish this as a context for why the work that we do is important. Why does the Clean Air Act exist? And Dan put a link in the chat. Again, New York Times had a recent article looking at some of the new information that's coming out, linking exposure to air pollution to dementia. So, okay. So next slide, please, Dan. So the goals for today's discussion. So by the end of the conversation today, I would like the board to understand ORCAA's authorities with respect to outdoor burning, to understand where our costs come from with respect to managing outdoor burning, and to understand some of the benefits that we have in terms of the system for residential burn notification that we have in Thurston County, and why that makes managing residential burning in Thurston County easier. And then lastly, the point I would like is as we wrap up this discussion today, I would like some direction from the board on where we go from here with this. Again, we had a proposal back in August. Again, just looking for some direction from the board about moving forward on this or not. So, okay, next slide, please. All right, so again, last month, Mike and Dan talked about the applicable laws, regulations, again, starting with the RCW, then going to ecology's regulations, specifically the 173.425, which is the outdoor burning regulation, and 173.430, which is agricultural burning. And then from there, Rule 6.2, which is ORCAA's outdoor burning regulation. And so I'm going to hand this off to Mike, who's going to talk about some additional components of Rule 6.2, and then talk a little bit more about the costs and kind of how does his staff, how do the inspectors deal with, and others at ORCAA deal with outdoor burn complaints that come in. So, Mike.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Just want to reiterate that ORCAA gets our authority through the WAC to issue burn permits, agriculture permits, ceremonial permits, training fires, and 2 other permits that we'll talk about in more detail here, and that's the land clearing burn and the residential burn. Part of our program with the WAC, that we get the authority from the WAC, allows us to delegate some of that authority for permit writing to the locals, fire departments, if they choose to do that, and we come into a memorandum of agreement or memorandum of understanding. We've got those with sporadic fire departments throughout the area. But as part of that, the agreements maintain ORCAA's enforcement of air quality rules. The enforcement of fire danger rules always remain with the local sheriff's department or the fire marshals, not ORCAA. So it's important to keep that in mind, that we do air quality enforcement, and then the locals can do the fire danger enforcement as they choose.
Did you want Dan to bring up the rule?
So say, Dan, if you could bring up the rule, and we'll first get into the definitions. As you can see, I touched on those at 6.21, the types of permits. I didn't go into the ones on the bottom of that list because we don't do many of those. But if Dan can go down with two in the 6.22, the definitions, I'm just gonna cover a few of them. First, the permitting ones that we talked about, land clearing burn permit. Burning of stumps and vegetation from an operation that clears the property, usually but not always changing the use of the property. That's my synopsis of that. I'm not gonna read it verbatim. Residential is the backyard burning of vegetative trimmings, and that's important. The trimmings is the key. You know, if you're gonna trim your trees or trim your hedges, cut back some roadies or something, that's what you can burn, and that'd be a residential burning. And as we get into further, some of those areas require permits, some don't. The nuisance, 6 point, they don't talk about it later in 6.25, but the nuisance right there, that's important. A lot of our complaints come from people affected by the smoke, which would fall into the nuisance definition. And as it says up there, it's you know, you cannot cause a person to have an emission that would be detrimental to their health, safety, or welfare of any person, causes problems of property. And if it does that, it's caused a nuisance. We generally will get smoke nuisances, but sometimes we'll get ash nuisances, because ash, if it falls off your property from the fire onto somebody else's property, that would also be a nuisance. You gotta, so generally that's why people call, and then we go out there to deal with the nuisance that might turn into a prohibited burn or things of that nature. The only thing that doesn't really fit into the permit category is recreational. And that's basically your campfire. We have a definition in there, the WAC has a definition, but it basically says that dry season firewood, campfire, everybody knows what one is when they're having one. So you cannot dispose of your trimmings in a campfire pit and call it a campfire. Creates a lot more smoke, it's not dry season firewood, and that's an important note to do. Since I've talked about complaints, I'm gonna give you a quick little rundown about how we handle complaints, and then and this kind of give you an idea.
Is there anything more in the rule you wanted, Mike, or you want to go over? Should Dan go back to the slides?
Let's go back to the slides, Dan, thanks. When we get a complaint, it's gonna be handled by the administrative staff first, and they will get the phone call or an online complaint. They then pass it off to the inspectors. The inspectors will look at the complaint. They'll, first thing, if it's in Thurston County or McCleary, they'll go on to the, our database and see if the people have gotten a permit. If they've gotten a permit, that's great. Because then we can call the people and or email them and say, hey, we're getting a complaint, what's going on? Can you clean up the fire or put it out for a while till the winds change? So we can do that without a response of going out to the site. If we don't have a permit, well, then we discuss with the supervisor, is it worth going out to? And basically, if it's happening at the time, if it's prohibited materials, if it's bothering somebody, we have to make that call. We'll go out to the site, basically do education one-on-one. If it's not currently going on and it's a smaller issue, we might send a warning letter. But definitely if it's going on, we want to stop it, because that's, you know, the people are affected by it right at that moment. So we go out to the site. If we find out it's like this picture right here, that's going to be an enforcement action. That's going to be a notice of violation. So that notice of violation would get written. It gets reviewed by the supervisor and or me. It goes out to the violator. 30 days later, we send another penalty assessment to the violator. And then we will review that internally, the penalty assessment, and they will usually call and ask for mitigation. We have that discussion, and then we come down to a final penalty. I wanted to go over all that real quick because that's all the labor that goes into these complaints. It's quite a bit of labor, and again, it's an unfunded thing. So next slide, Dan. So the cost, you see there, enforcement costs, administrative costs, they all go into this, and we'll get into some numbers here on the next slide a little bit too. But we last year, our fiscal year, we spent about $345,000 on outdoor burning. That's unfunded. That's, you know, we have to take that from other sources that we get stuff in. I'll hit that up in a minute. But that's a lot of money. And so, but you can see the enforcement adds cost to it. The administrative, before the inspectors get it, there's a cost there. So we need to do something to reduce those costs and also educate people. A quick little note, the amount of enforcement hours spent in the outdoor burn program is by far the largest amount of enforcement costs time-wise we spend in any of our programs. All of them, it's way by far no problem, no close, not even close, sorry. Yet the money we get from the enforcement of outdoor burning in fiscal year 25 was only 27,400. There'll be some more coming in because a lot of people make payments, as we've talked in the past. Sometimes people don't pay, and we don't have, you know, all we have is a method to send it to collection. So
Mike, is that 27,500 fines, or is that revenue from regulating the outdoor burning?
That is fine money, penalty money, and that's what we collect.
Okay.
We have assessed more than that, quite a bit more than that. But a lot of it, we don't get paid, so it's lost, squatters, things like that, people who just don't pay, and then it goes to collections. So out of that $345,000 and all that labor, you're gonna see some hours on the next slide, please, Dan. We only recovered last year $27,500 for that. And as you can see here, and as I mentioned before, the complaints or enforcement and complaints are hugely because of outdoor burning, not the other programs we have.
I think I've heard you say 73% of our complaints are related to.
Yes, of all the complaints we get, asbestos, wood stove, businesses, 73% of all the complaints are outdoor burning. And so that ties into that. And as you can see up there, Thurston County alone had 459 outdoor burning complaints last year. The other counties had a total of 209 that we got. Of those 668 total complaints, 121 were issued notice violations. Adding the violation time and the complaint time for the year, it was 1,500 hours that we spent last year. And it wasn't an abnormally high year or whatever. If you did the average of the last 3 years, I think it was, I can't tell you the numbers there, but we spent like 320,000. So it's not that 2005 is a anomaly. So from there, to break down the numbers a little bit more, it's also important to note that a vast majority of the complaints that came in and enforcement were from people who did not get a residential permit. It was very, again, if we have a residential permit, we would go out or we'd get online and talk to them and stop it. But even before we get the complaint, most of them, a vast majority, are not people who have a permit. They get the permit, they want to do it right. So that kind of shows us those outdoor burning permits or notifications are serving to educate people how to burn correctly. Outdoor burn, on average, without enforcement, can take an average of 2.2 hours for us to deal with. And so, you know, it's gonna be longer if we go to Forks, longer if we go to Long Beach, Forks or wherever. Oh, and on that note, I did a check real quick the other day. Of the 459 in Thurston County, the next highest county of complaints would be Grace Harbor, then Clallam, and then Jefferson, and Mason and Pacific County are the least. Mason's a little different because we've got an agreement with them that they do a little bit more than the other counties, so they get a lot of their complaints. But that's kind of the breakdown of complaints. It kind of lines up with population and businesses a little bit that way too, not completely, but just a little tidbit of how it breaks down through the counties. If you add the hours, I'm sorry, if you add the dollars we spend, $345,000, divided by the 668 complaints we get, and then the NOV numbers, dollars, and the complaint response dollars, basically we're spending a little over $500 per complaint when you average enforcement in there. So that gives you a cost of what we have to eat or unfunded work here that we have to deal with. Next slide, please, Dan. So getting into the cost a little bit more, as I mentioned, the outdoor burn program is unfunded. There's no payback from a program for those dollars. Those dollars need to be paid somehow. Currently, they're coming out of the core grant, which we're losing a lot of, and they come out of assessments that every citizen pays. So at this time, I think it's important to note that all citizens are bearing the cost of the outdoor burn program because the assessments are going to be for everybody. Even if you're in a city like Aberdeen that can't burn at all, be residential, we're collecting a small amount of assessments for everybody there. So it is something that we are all as taxpayers paying for. Again, we don't get anything back except that little bit of enforcement money.
So, Mike, could I just clarify one thing? So it kind of relates to a question that Jeff asked. And so land clearing burning is a little different. So outdoor burning, so what we're really focusing here is residential burning. So we do, and as board probably remembers, we did increase the fee for land clearing burning this past year, but we're really not talking about that here. What we're talking about here is residential burning.
Yeah, land clearing has its own category, its own funding and whatnot. So with that, I want to pass it over to Dan to talk a little bit about the notification program.
Yeah, so thanks. Was there a comment?
No, I was just going to ask, Mike, I know you had some questions last month about kind of about ORCAA's process and where do our costs come from in this program? Did what Mike Schultz just went through answer the questions that you had last month?
Yeah, I think that did. I just wanted to make sure that we didn't waste last month's meeting. That was most of why I asked a bunch of those questions to make sure that we actually, made a productive use of that time so that we could take action today. The other thing I would say is the analogy that makes sense to me as a county commissioner is code enforcement. And I think anyone that's on a city council or a county commissioner understands that code enforcement, it's not really, we would love to do more. We know it's really expensive. We know it's really hard. We know it's where we get generally the most public feedback that we're either doing too much or not doing enough. And I'm not surprised that you all have the same kind of confluence of struggles with it. Now, I don't think that makes the decision any easier or more obvious, but I'm glad that we're having the conversation, and I certainly have some opinions that when we get to that point of the conversation, I'll be happy to share. But I think you did a good job giving that, the baseline of knowledge that we all need to have to make a good decision.
All right, well, moving on to the existing, it's currently a permit program, or it's called a permit program in our rule. It really is a notification program. It's free. It's self-populating or self-issuing. I've got a screenshot of what the form or the web page looks like. Again, and right on this website, and I'm gonna try to share the website too. Get back to and make that a little bigger. So this is the actual web page. You can see right now it's just for Thurston County, Grace Harbor County, Fire District 12, McCleary area. Terms and conditions are listed for both of those. Right now, Thurston County's unique in that when the initial permit program was set up 23 years ago or so, the Thurston County Outdoor Burn Committee, which was ORCAA Thurston County, the fire chiefs, the fire commissioners, DNR, Thurston Capcom at the time, it's the 911 services, Thurston Emergency Management, all got together, worked it out. And so Thurston set their pile size because they did have a permit program. We were doing a permit program. They were able to increase their pile size to 10 feet instead of the 4 that's listed in WAC. So anyway, those are the terms and conditions for the counties, or for Thurston County and for the jurisdictions that currently use the notification system. Before people fill this out, and you can see we do tell people you do need to check to make sure you're not in a city or urban growth area. And right now, excuse me, in Thurston County, we use the assessor's parcel lookup. We do that in Grace Harbor too for Fire District 12. I've also developed this map so that it's basically an overlay of all the cities and urban growth areas in our jurisdiction. So people can just plug in. You can see I plugged in a address that I'm going to use to demo, and you can see it's well outside the urban growth area of Lacey. It's on Yelm Highway, so I'm going to go ahead and show you just how easy it is to use this. And again, you've got reminders, only natural vegetation, only during daylight hours. So I'm gonna do a quick fill in here. Oops, that orf. And I'm going to use this address is actually Lacey Fire 3's fire station out on Yelm Highway, just because I wanted to show one that was outside the city and urban growth area, and ORCAA is well within the city. So I'm going to say it's same as the.
Hey, Dan, does the city need to be Lacey? You've got Olympia there.
It actually is a.
Oh,
it doesn't
no,
need
okay.
to be. It can be. It's whatever the postal service or what the homeowner uses.
Yeah.
When it's the location of the city designation is really a postal thing. And that's all it takes. So once they hit that submit button once, it auto populates to our back end of our website in a database, and then sends an automatic email to the person submitting the notification. They get the notification with all of these terms and conditions again outlined on that response email. Currently, and I'm going to jump back to our presentation. Currently, we create a map in-house with all of the existing permits. And we, again, have those city UGA overlays so we can immediately see if any of those submitted notifications were within cities and urban growth areas. If they are, they get a email back from us saying your permit is invalid because you're in this area, or because you didn't submit a complete address, or whatever the reason why it's not a valid permit. So again, it gives us a chance to communicate with the burners before they fill out the notification, after they fill out the notification, when they get their response back, and then going through the other benefits, it provides an easy outreach to all potential burners. If there are things that come up, if we have compliance issues, if there's complaints of smoke or nuisance odors in that neighborhood, we can contact all of the people that have filled it out, ask if they're burning that day, and if so, making sure they're following the terms and conditions. Also, if there's fire safety issues, if we need to shut down burn like we did this year earlier than the standard July 15th, we are able to immediately reach out to every permit holder via email and say the fire safety burn ban has started early this year. No burning after, I think this year it was July 5 or 6 in Thurston County. Same with if there's an air quality inversion, air quality burn ban. If we see an inversion, we can immediately reach out to every potential burner that's filled out the notification and say, please refrain from burning until conditions improve. So it's a way for us to educate in mass instead of compliance going out and educating one-on-one, one compliance officer going out to one home and talking to one burner at a time. And again, that's taking 2.5 hours for each complaint for each one of those outreach efforts. So it's a, excuse me, it's a way to do mass education with very little cost. The program setup, it's pretty much self-maintaining. The good news is I think with our new database in the future, we'll even be able to automate that internal mapping. And so we can take off those hours of work of mapping these manually and checking their suitability and location. So if there's any questions on that, I'm happy to answer. Otherwise, I'm going to turn it back over to Jeff.
So I think it goes to Mike from here.
Or to Mike, okay?
All right, I'm just gonna talk real briefly on enforcement. Dan talked about education, which is definitely the way to go if we can do it. But we do have to do enforcement, as you saw up there, 100 and some NOVs. And basically the 3 principles put up there, that's what we hope to accomplish through enforcement. And that's not just us pulling those things out, that's actually what the Pollution Control Hearings Board talks about when they're talking about the cost of a penalty and the people want to appeal that penalty. They're looking at the penalty we did, is it fair to, and will it influence behavior, encourage compliance, and deter future violations? So that's our goal with enforcement when we have to do that. It's one way to educate, but like as Dan said, it's a costly way to the violator and a costly way to ORCAA to get that type of education across. Next slide.
Okay, so you have to think it comes back to me now. So, all right, so what now? So, again, since August, we've talked quite a bit about this, both at board meetings, and I've had individual conversations with a number of you about this. We've talked about the cost to the agency, and some of the tools that we use to manage this, and to educate the public. So staff believe that the residential burning system, the residential burning notification system we've discussed, does provide multiple benefits to the agency. We recommend that we position ourselves to roll this out at the start of next year's burn season. So that would be October of 2026. Again, at the conclusion of the fire safety burn bans, that we would then, as of October of next year, have this in place. Also just wanted to clarify that, again, it will take further board action to move this to anything other than voluntary. In our rule 6.2, it does list Thurston County as a required residential burn permit. So the board would, to make this something that we could issue a notice of violation for not having this notification, we would have to update the permit, or I'm sorry, update our rules. And of course, that would come before the board. And also, let's see. Yeah, so with that, before turning it over for discussions, for additional questions and discussion, just wanted to say, if the board does give us the go ahead, then what's next? So Dan, if you could go to this next slide, please. So, okay, and hit the next. So if the board does direct us to move forward, then clearly we need a lot of stakeholder conversations with fire districts, with county officials, with the public, and would really look to you as board members to let us know, who in your jurisdictions do we need to be reaching out to? Where do we need to have these conversations? There'll be a lot of outreach. We've been having internal conversations about that. And then again, when we're looking at scaling this up internally, we've been having conversations about, streamlining our internal processes around it. As Dan mentioned, our new database would probably make this a little easier to manage. And so with that, then I would like to open it up for questions, discussion with the board. And Dan, maybe if you could take the slides down so we can see each other a little better. Great.
Thank you for that. I want to make just 2 quick comments before I open it up. And one is to just thank Georgia for the questions, because I think we always have better policy when we slow down. And so this is something that came up in a finance conversation, but didn't get into the meat there of the actual mission and the work of ORCAA and with our stakeholders. And so I'm really glad that we took the time to learn more. And then I just wanted to also say that I think the thing that's really clear to me now is that we are not talking about money. That may or may not be a future conversation, but right now we're talking about the possibility of asking staff to bring back a region-wide framework for outdoor burning notification system in time for the fall of 2026 burn season. And so that will be the question in front of us, should we get to a motion. So Georgia, go ahead.
So, couple things. One of the things that I think that is important is, and we had talked about, Dan and Mike, about public outreach to let them know about this program should we adopt it, and how costly that is. And if ORCAA's budget is already constrained, then it doesn't seem like, unless you are planning to charge for this permitting process, it doesn't seem like, how would you afford the marketing campaign necessary to let the communities know about this permitting new structure for them? So, because a campaign, I spent many years, decade and a half in advertising, a campaign to reach all of Grays Harbor to allow them to let them know about a new residential burning permit system would be extremely costly. And it doesn't appear that ORCAA has that in their budget to do that. And then it goes back to, if this was brought by the finance committee as a means for revenue generation, well, then the intent has to be somewhere down the line for it to generate revenue, which, I mean, I just keep trying to, I believe in education for our public. I do believe that it is important that people know what they should and shouldn't be burning. I'm just not sure that implementing a voluntary permitting system is the answer, because in government, my experience has been that once something is established as voluntary, it does usually at some point become either mandatory or have a price attached to it. I will also just say, since I'm just going to say my whole piece right now and people can pick it apart, I did have our fire marshal go back to the different fire districts. Besides Fire District 12, there is not any support for this permitting program. That's my piece.
Thank you,
So
Georgia.
I can address the cost of promotion and disseminating this. So we operate outreach on a shoestring budget. So social media is essentially free, other than my time. We, in Fire District 12, for instance, when we launched that, we created posters that we shared with the local libraries, with the schools, with the grocery stores to post on bulletin boards, with the fire district, as well as flyers and brochures specific to them. We did some PSAs through the local radio stations, and talked to the daily paper out of Aberdeen, Hoquiam. So really the cost was minimal. And if we buy radio spots, which I think has been one of the most effective means for us to get programs like this, or our wood stove program out, we can tailor that from 1,000 to 5,000 per county, or per, I mean, it's, most of the radio stations are hitting multiple jurisdictions. The Port Angeles promos we did last year, I think I spent $2,000, and we got another 50 or 60 wood stove programs done out of there. So, and that was, and then doing things like home shows and farmers markets. So it's really, we are not looking at a mass mailers. We're not looking at big cost of promotion. Because it is voluntary and a slow rollout, we can take our time and kind of spread the word through the communities through our normal channels. And again, in Thurston County, maybe there would be a fee, but we've had a permit program for more than 23 years now with no fee.
Yeah, and I've been trying for like 10, Georgia, so it's not set in stone. So before I go back to Georgia, Jeff, can you address that? You and I have talked a little bit about the reasonable cost alternative being what should drive price point if there is ever one. Can you talk a little bit about that need to do that work in the future?
Sure. So the WAC does, so 425, 173, 425 does have a particular section that requires local air agencies every 3 years to do what's called a reasonable alternatives to burning analysis, which if there are, is again, the Clean Air Act, and there's multiple places actually in ORCAA's regulations as well. And the first little bit of Rule 6.2 talks about how, to the extent possible, we will come up with alternatives to outdoor burning. But the WAC tells us we need to do this analysis, and if there are other alternatives such as composting or other ways of disposing of yard clippings, then we have to basically eliminate outdoor burning in particular counties. We don't see that any county other than Thurston County as having enough transfer stations and other things within reach. And so that was an analysis that Robert Moody did, I think like 10 years or so ago. The board decided at that point not to move forward. We haven't brought it forward again. I know actually Puget Sound Clean Air Agency's board is moving to eliminate that in all 4 of their counties, in Kitsap, in Pierce, Kings, and Snohomish counties. So actually I'm getting information about that on Monday. But so Jim, I'm not sure, in my mind, that's a little different than this. I mean, that's something that we'll be looking at for Thurston County, but we're trying to disentangle that really from this, because again, we don't see any other of ORCAA's counties other than Thurston potentially where there are reasonable alternatives to burning.
Thank you. Yeah, and my logic in that is that when something has to change, like a elimination, that's when you would move to voluntary, and you would use a fee structure to change behavior, like we would in alcohol tax. Actually is a really good example of how behavior changes and then use declines. So that's why I made that connection in my head. So Georgia, do you have a follow-up or a different issue before I go to everyone else?
Well, just really quick, I know you had said if we take the money, the cost part, the $10, $15, whatever fee out of it. However, I can't take it out of the conversation, because so much of the conversation when you're doing the presentation is about, hey, we have lack of revenue and we got to figure out a way for revenue. And so the natural progression of my brain will say that the plan is eventually to charge a money for this fee, whether you have in the past or not. The conversation around the presentation is about eventually at some point getting revenue from this. So I just, that's it. That's what I got.
Thank you. And I'm not going to give my whole opinion every time someone says, but if I had had another vote, we would have still been having a different conversation. So I just don't see that as something that's being pushed for. But it's also like, I think a very clear decision-making process that the board's going to be in the next budget is having a several $100,000 shortfall of our state and federal money. So all considerations of revenue and efficiencies are going to be on the table for you all, not me. So Dan, a response to that, and then I want to see if other board members have anything else.
Yeah, I just want to note that when we're discussing this in-house, we're not looking at revenue. We're talking about cutting costs. That's the big driver, is making the program reduce expenses, not increase revenue.
That's a good clarification. Thank you. All right. Other thoughts or opinions or questions? I mean, sorry. Craig.
Yeah, no questions really. I guess I like Dan's last comment, and I guess my one response to Georgia is, as we develop these policies, when we do change the idea, I mean, sometimes the underpinning foundation changes as well too. So I'm not sure if it has to be a revenue conversation. I mean, I often see when we put in, locally, we're talking about planning, put in a regulation intended to do good and also generate revenue, it has all sorts of downstream unintended consequences. So I totally understand that. I think that the refocusing of this as an educational program to ameliorate an expense overrun is a good recasting of it. And I think, to my mind, responsive to the concerns. And I think we could just, maybe ensconce in a motion or policy that we really are intending this as an educational program that is mission aligned with ORCAA. And, of course, some other board down the line can come in and make any choice that they want, but I'm comfortable proceeding with this educational program and not really framing it and just removing the additional fees down the line. I mean, that's always a possible conversation in the future, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't do this action, I guess. So I'm in favor of it. Thank you.
And I'll just say before I call on others that if Emily wants to speak, probably need to hear it because I can't see her until she speaks. So,
Okay. Thank you, Jim. I don't have anything at this time, but thank you.
okay. Others. Mike, you promised us an opinion and no one's raising their hand.
Sure. So I'll say that I like the reframing of this as a notification rather than a permit. I think it's tough because illegal burning is already illegal. So we're not changing the ground rules. And I don't think we ever proposed really to change those ground rules. And what's interesting to me, I actually learned something in this meeting, that in the county where we do have a notification / permit, we have this fuzzy language or whatever, they get more. They get a 10-foot burn rather than 4-foot. Did I get that wrong?
Nope,
Yeah.
that's correct.
I can address that. The WAC says that if you have a written permit program, you can assign a different size to it. If you do not have that written program, residential burning only, if you do not have that program, you're limited to 4 feet because that's the maximum in the WAC without a written permit. So since there is a written permit in there, we could go 10 feet. There's some questions whether or not that's the best size, but that's why it's different, is because it has a written permit.
And we
So you
talked
add
about
flexibility as well. I think that's a really good thing to lift up, Mike. Thank you.
And I'll have other thoughts. Randy, did you want to talk about that part of it and interrupt?
He's waiting. Go ahead.
Okay. So I find that really interesting. And, so again, the underlying illegal burning is illegal. It's going to remain illegal. We have enforcement capabilities against it. Our goal is, so I guess at this point I'm in favor. I'm really glad that we slowed down and put the pause on this. And to that, I'm going to give, credit to Georgia. And I totally get her position. I see a slippery slope, potential as well. I think that, I like the idea of doing, more public education on this. I actually really like the idea of seeing if we can get, more acceptable rural burning because we have this notification system all off Thurston County. That's actually something I'm kind of interested in. But at this point, I think I'm in favor of the staff recommendation. I would not be in favor of calling it a permit, and I would not be in favor of a fee.
Thank you, Mike. Randy.
Okay. So first, Georgia, thank you. And I want to say, Georgia, you're 100% correct. When this first came up in the finance, so we weren't looking at it as a revenue stream, just to let everybody else know. What this is kind of a legacy thing. Jim has been looking at something of this for a long time. And when I started looking at it, because as you know, I'm usually the turd in the punch bowl and stuff like that. I just am. I started looking for ways that it could still work without putting the rights of the individuals at risk and the process that it would do. And I brought up the same concerns the very first time we were talking about it years ago, is the idea of a fee turns into a greater fee and a bigger fee, and it just never seems to end. Once you put a hole in a bucket that's made of sand, the hole just gets bigger and bigger. With that being said, when I was sitting there talking that day, Jim had said a few things that had a different spin on it a little bit. And I started looking at it a little bit different. So I'm going to share with everybody how I seen it. It's not exactly what's being presented, but there's some benefits to it. And there's some closeness to it. The idea of it not being truly a permit on our side is very important to me. Why I say not a permit on our side, it issued as a permit, but as a tool that the other counties can and maybe should use, but not a requirement on the counties. That was one of the things I made very clear when we were talking about it, is I don't want to have a force on the counties at all. I don't want the ORCAA to use this mechanism to use it as an enforcement mechanism. But with that being said, you started realizing some of the benefits, such as let's just say that the city of Lacey decides they want to use it though as a permit and require it. The tool would already be there at hand to be able to do that if they chose to do it. If Mason County wanted to have them do it as a free permit to get it going, it would be Mason County's decision to use the tool that they're creating. With that tool that gets created is the idea that we know where the fires are, maybe. And there's an education aspect that comes to the people that have to go to do it. I would envision a few simple questions after they do an education, a multiple choice that are simple, but it gives them, there should be no fuel around where the fire is. There should be no such, and you get an education that comes with it. The other thing is the idea that I would hope, and this is where it sounds a little bit different, but not far from what Mike was mentioning. I'd like to see if there was going to be them doing this, it wouldn't matter if they were charging a little something. For example, if they wanted to offer a permit for 10-foot burns and charge $25 for that permit, but give this Mason County the ability to have that 10-foot burn if we chose to do it, and if we choose to put it in our code to allow for it, there'd be a great benefit to that to the people that are out there in the community, but not to force them. The other one should be free and allowed to be free. But again, I didn't want to see it as a mechanism from ORCAA as an something to empower ORCAA to have authority over the counties. I definitely do not want that. So it's the opposite. I would like to be able to have it as a tool to use in my county, sit around with our fire marshals and talk about it and say, you know what, it'd be nice if we start to tell everybody you should go and get this free permit. And if we want to get it to be larger, there's an opportunity for that. So I'm kind of in between a little bit on all this. I'd like to see it move forward, but not as any type of authority from ORCAA, but as a tool that ORCAA presents that could be used by the county if they choose to, use for education and use for knowing where the fires are going to be for when the phone calls come in. That would save money as we're starting to look forward and dealing with these calls. That's a lot to put in there, and I'm not sure I just helped anybody with what I was saying, but that's where my head was when we were doing all this.
Thank you, Randy. Joan or Emily? Okay, so I think the thing that I would add to the conversation, and I kind of like, I think the ideas that Randy's coming up with are the ones that sound like the implementation conversation to me, right? Like, so when the staff bring back an actual program, then there's another opportunity for the board to massage the final outcome before it moves towards the implementation phase, right? Like there's some policy work and some outreach work that has to happen before you can implement anything. And so that's kind of where I feel Randy's suggestions lying, but let me ask Randy if anything you're saying there is something that you need to resolve today, if possible, or if those are ideas for how to do it.
Yeah, yes, it's something that's still connected to this one today. And where it's connected to it today is just the idea that it's a tool being created and not an enforcement action under the authorities of ORCAA to put into place. It's a tool being created for anybody in all counties and jurisdictions to be able to use. And, I myself, if it was free and if it allowed us to have the 25-foot, I think I might actually advocate for in Mason County to be part of our regular part of doing business. But not if you're doing it as an authority over the top of Mason County, then I won't be doing that.
Jeff, I think I saw you try to partially raise your hand, so I want to check before I go back to Georgia.
As in me?
Yeah.
Well, some thoughts are going through my mind, but no, I think,
Okay.
let's go back to the board. Let's go to Georgia.
Georgia.
If that's the case, then I would prefer to see, before I agree to anything, I would prefer to see, you know, the devil's in the details, right? I would prefer to see it in writing exactly what the program entails and what it would look like. Because to say, yes, I vote for the program, but then it shifts later. Do you see what I'm saying? I would rather.
No, I do. And that's how I framed what the question is as well, is that we would, if we move forward, it's to direct staff to bring back the program so we can see it.
So if we move forward, it's not to say, yes, I'm agreeing to the program. Yes, I'm agreeing to them to give us a specific what the program would look like so that we can decide on the program.
As a board, we do or don't think it's a good idea right now, and we should keep going forward or not. Yeah. Jeff?
So I'm a little, so what staff have been proposing, what it has been in my mind, and I believe Dan and Mike as well, but I'll look to them, but is essentially rolling out. I mean, I don't think there's a lot of, we're not talking about a lot of policy changes here. What we're talking about is rolling out what we've got in Thurston County to the other 5 counties. So an online notification system. Again, you know, Thurston County is a little different because they're specifically named in our regulation. So, but so essentially what we're talking about is the system that Dan showed, so that starting on October 1st next year, you know, we would ask that anybody who wants to burn, to have a residential fire would go onto our website, would submit that information. And then we would have, again, we'd have their contact information. We would have that information on a map. And so, but again, it's not required. Again, it took many years in Thurston County to roll up to, I mean, now we've got over 3,000 residential burning applications that had come in the first few weeks of October 10th or whenever we opened it up this year. So it's going to take a while to get there, but I'm not anticipating. So I guess I need a little clarity on what.
So I created that confusion. Let me just say, so in the presentation, I saw that we needed to do outreach and that we needed, and you said we needed to do a rule update. And so those are the things to me that are part of a timeline between now and October that are not super clear.
So there is not a rule update. There's not a rule update. That wasn't, I don't think that was on the slides. There's some policy stuff. I mean, we want to.
I thought you said there was language in Thurston County's rule that wouldn't fit.
Well, no, so in Thurston County, so the staff proposal is that Thurston County stays how it is on October 1st of next year. So it's still in Thurston County to do a residential fire, you still need a permit. And ORCAA can issue a notice of violation if you don't have a permit. The rest of our 5 counties, we are as of October 1st of 2026, we're asking anybody who wants to have a residential fire on their property to go onto our website, submit the notification. But there's, again, it'll just be purely an education and outreach campaign until the board comes back to this to decide, okay, we want to move this, we want to make this a requirement. But we're not proposing that at this point. And I don't know, Dan, Mike, anything?
No, I think that's right. The only thing would be really the semantics of the word permit in the rule right now, that, you know, if we wanted to make it notification, we at some point could change that.
That's what I was stuck on.
We wouldn't change it for lane clearing. That by the state law requires a permit, and we already deal with that. And as Jeff said, nothing would change other than we would say, like we do with McCleary and Grace and Fire District 12. We didn't write a new policy or program. We just implemented the Grace Harbor program to them.
The Thurston County program.
I'm sorry, Thurston County program to Grace Harbor Fire District 12. And we could launch that out, you know, as we continue to get, you know, discuss it with outreach and get the okay to do such.
Okay. Thank you for that. And I'm sorry to cause confusion in the way I was framing it. So I was not, it doesn't sound like I was right, Georgia, but it'll all be about what the motion is. So, Randy. And I want to try and wrap this to some sort of direction in 5 minutes or so. So
So the way Jeff presented it, though, that goes back to my worry just a little bit, Jeff. Just so you know, if ORCAA is rolling it out in order for ORCAA to do it, that is the beginning of implementation. That is the beginning of requirement. What I was hoping for personally is that we roll it out as a tool we're creating for the counties, cities, and other jurisdictions to use in their implementation of doing it. That's the difference. The difference is if ORCAA is doing it and putting it out there voluntarily and it's being, them, they're going to change it just the way you said it. In a year or 2 years, it'll become an enforcement action. I don't want to give up my county's ability to control its own future. I don't, I'm not a guy that's for tax increases, but I never would deny the people the ability to put the burden on themselves. So if they want to vote for it, they go for it. So on this one, I just see it more, I'm just, we do it as a tool that other counties can capitalize on, jump on to utilize throughout their county. And yeah.
Could I answer that, Jim? All right, so this is an ORCAA tool. This is not a county tool or a city tool. This isn't, I mean, ORCAA is the one with the authority over outdoor burning regulations. And so again, we can certainly, if, again, Grace Harbor 12, or I mean, we delegate ORCAA's authority to some fire districts in our jurisdiction, but, and if they wanted to then take on this, I mean, that could certainly happen, but ORCAA welcomes those relationships with the local officials, but this is, so I don't know, that I see this as something that ORCAA is moving forward with. Well,
yeah, and right now to deal with Randy's issue, Mason County, the whole county has an agreement, which Randy knows, with us for the fire marshal to do education and right to land clearing burn permits, but it does not give the fire marshal the ability to write violations or do enforcement on clean air rules that are broken. They can do it on fire danger issues, fire safety issues. So that the enforcement part, I don't think ORCAA is saying we would relinquish, but we would not be enforcing it just because they didn't get a permit, a notification. We would just look at the conditions on that notification and say, are you following those? And hopefully they will be, and there'd be no problem. If they weren't, then we'd ask why, and then we'd decide whether we go further. But the authority for enforcement, through all these agreements we have, stays with ORCAA for clean air. And that's, I think, we got to draw the difference. County's fire marshal can do fire danger, fire safety issues like that, but they currently in Mason County, Grace Harbor County, we get calls from the fire departments and the fire marshals from all those counties asking us to do enforcement on certain cases that they continue to talk to and the people don't do it right. And that wouldn't change whether we have this notification or not. Hopefully this notification could help the fire departments and fire marshal convince people to do the right thing, because it'll list all the conditions that maybe these people do not know about. So it should cut down on the enforcement. And that's what I mentioned earlier, is that out of the 409 complaints and 121 violations that we wrote, the vast majority, I don't have a number, but I would venture to guess 5% or so are ones that had a notification, had the permit in Thurston County. The rest didn't have one. Now, they maybe didn't want to get one, or maybe they didn't know about it, but it tells me that the notification, people who get that do understand the rules and the consequences of not following the conditions. And that's what we really want to get out there. Follow the rules, follow the conditions, then ORCAA would not have to spend so much time responding.
are you back up, Randy? Yeah, go ahead.
Then I'm sad to say, if it is an ORCAA permit that they're just not going to enforce at this time, then I would not be in favor of it.
Okay.
That's what.
And the language in our
intent.
Well, and I don't know if the intent's the right word, but the language in our implementation that we've talked about will be a voluntary outdoor burning notification system, right? The word permit doesn't exist, but I get the flexibility. You're trying to go
No,
for.
intent on what the director just said. I always believe the words and the actions above anything that is written and left out in the open. He just said it would be basically a permit action that we don't directed and put out by ORCAA that we will choose not to enforce this time. That is what I heard, and that's what bothered me. So just so you know.
So until we put this in our rule, we can't, there's nothing to enforce.
Yeah, so you don't, the notification system doesn't take a rule change is what was clarified. And that it would not be enforceable. There would be no penalties associated because it's not in the rules other than in Thurston County. And I get the flexibility that you're trying to go for, Randy, but that's not, I think the answer was that that's not an authority the cities and counties have. It's ORCAA's authority. So
I understood that. That's
okay,
what
cool.
That was the clarification of what changed my view on it.
Cool.
That's where I said I'm hearing.
Yeah, no, I'm just paraphrasing so we make sure we're on the same page. Cool. Okay. Any other comments? Anyone have a problem with the chair making a motion? I move to direct staff to implement a region-wide voluntary educational outdoor burning notification system in time for the fall of 2026 burn season.
Second.
Greg. Oh, I'm not hearing you.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
There it is. Yeah, you're back.
Okay,
Yeah.
just a little delay. I'm just, as a friendly amendment, what about adding, sorry, I don't have this phrase, but with progress reports along the way, basically. So with 2 progress reports as the policy and workshops with the board as they develop the program.
Okay. Yeah, that seems like a good understanding from the discussion. Emily, are you okay with that?
I'm okay with that, yes.
Okay. Is there further discussion?
So just so I can clarify this, if people of the public ask, this is not a rule change. So we are not changing whether or not burning is legal or illegal in any of our jurisdictions. We are creating a voluntary notification system so that when people want to burn, if they want to do it legally, they will be able to find good information and access the resources they'll need to burn legally. If people have no interest in burning legally, we're probably not going to change their behavior. We're probably going to still have, to do interdiction or code or enforcement activities in those situations. But we're not changing any rules. We're creating a voluntary notification system so that when people want to burn legally, they have information readily at their fingertips. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
And it will take a fair amount of time for adoption to happen in that same space. So, okay. Randy, and then Georgia.
So again, I'm torn because your motion was simplistic enough that I can understand it and follow it and appreciate it. It is the implementation aspect that we've kept talking about from the beginning of this that's still out there somewhere. So I can support your motion, but there's other stuff behind it that is written somewhere that I'm a little confused on. Exactly how your motion was worded, I can support that. That's just we're telling staff to go and put forward a program like this for us to review in the future is what that came down to. If that's what that is, that's an easier motion to understand and appreciate. But if there's an action that comes into implementation in that motion that is somewhere in the writing and not in what your verbiage just was, then I need to know that.
Georgia?
I'm still not sure what problem this solves because the information is readily available now for them to find on what they can and can't burn. So it's already out there. So I don't understand, other than in my mind, that down the road, this leads the path for something else. In my mind, I cannot wrap my head around how this makes sense, and therefore I cannot support it.
Thank you. Others? Mike?
Just to respond, I totally understand what you said, Georgia, there. And staff can weigh in on this if they think that I'm stating this incorrectly, but in my understanding, the problem that it solves is it gives staff more access to more legal burns so that they don't have to go investigate them as robustly. If they can look and say, oh, look, the person that complained, maybe they're wrong. This person got a permit, they got a notification. They gave us their notification. Can staff weigh in on that?
I would say that it makes communication with people who are burning much easier, because we know here from an office in Olympia who has applied for who has sent us a notification. We have emails for them. We can reach out to them. We've shared with the information about how to burn. I mean, you're right, Georgia. The information is available on our website, but this gives us more of a push opportunity rather than just people coming to our website.
And I think,
Go ahead, Mike.
I was just gonna say, I think Mike hit it on the nail on the head in this case, because as an inspector over the years and now the manager there, our first response, as I said earlier, if there was a notification that we had in-house in a pin on a map, that would be our first response. If it happened to be that address, we'd call them up and say, hey, you got some neighbors who feel they getting smoked out. Can you put the fire out and restart it later? Can you do A, B, and C? Or are you doing A, B, and C? And that'd be the end of it. We'd be done in 15 minutes with a complaint. So it would cut our time down instead of having to go out to Elma, Yale. I call the certain fire departments and ask for their help a lot, and they run out and do it. And I'm sure they got better things to do, but they help us with that. So it's really our way of communicating to a potential complaint to cut our response time.
And that's the thing that I would add to this conversation is when we tried to do this before and did some outreach and met with the fire commissioners and the fire chiefs, the response was, well, yeah, you can't do anything. You have so many complaints in Olympia, Lacey, and Tumwater that you're not able to handle. How is that going to matter? And what emphasizing and using this permit system has done is driven down the complaint responses in Olympia, Lacey, and Tumwater. And that's what we have in the rest of the counties is unknown complaints. And so by having the information for free, we'll be able to educate and drive down the complaints, which are the thing that's driving that $350,000 cost in our budget this year. So that's the place I'm coming from on George's comment. I'm going to go to Randy, and that was my comments because you've heard enough from me. And then I'll give one more chance before we go to action. Randy.
So for Georgia, my first couple of years here, I was you. I'm telling you, ask Jim. The truth is on this, and I haven't decided yet. I'm going to ask a question that'll help me make my final decision. But the truth is, I was you, and I didn't trust them, especially in the beginning. I fought, but honestly, they earned this group, Joan and all of them. They were there. They earned my respect and my patience on it, because when all push came to shove, they never. We only had one battle where it was that bad, and sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. So that's not a bad thing that I lost that one. But they've always been good about this, and so I have more leniency than I would in other organizations. Just their history of doing it, they've been good to their word every time. Now, with that being said, I got to ask Jim, because like I said, your motion is a little different than some of the things we've discussed. I hear a motion not to implement, but to create this system. The implementation of it and how we would use it later is to be determined by this board. Is that what your motion was to create this function? That was your motion, how you worded it. That's why I was asking you that.
I think I used the word implement, Randy. Like this needs to be up and running by fall.
Okay,
and if the board will have options in the budget and the ongoing regular operations of the board to ask questions, and I think that's where it was Greg that made the friendly amendment around reporting so that nothing will be a surprise, right? Like we won't get to October and the board hasn't heard anything about this. Like, Jeff and the staff keep you up with the process as it's moving forward. Especially, I think, the opportunity to take a moment and consider the outreach feedback, right? And if we go to Grays Harbor County and all of the fire commissioners echo what Georgia just said in the official, right, outreach from ORCAA, then the board might need to have a discussion. But
Hey,
that is, those are the openers for that I see. But otherwise, it's moving forward and working with the board and just see if Jeff has a different opinion than that.
Okay, then in my final comment on it, with that being said, then I will ask the other members of this board to vote against it because we are not ready for implementation on something you don't even have in writing in front of you to implement. The risk is great for the organizations, and the risk becomes great for separation because we don't even know what we're selling them yet. And if we don't honestly know that we're implementing a rule, if it's actually going to become a rule, I don't think I'm ready for that, and I would ask the other board members to consider that with their vote.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. And so then just a reminder that the motion is to direct staff to implement a voluntary educational regional outdoor burning notification system in time for the fall of 2026 burn season, while keeping the board apprised of the progress and reporting out on outcomes. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed?
Nay?
Okay, so I heard Emily's voice. I saw Mike and Greg. I see Georgia and Randy as nays. Joan, I don't think I caught your vote.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Thank you. So I have motion carries, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 2. Is that right?
Correct.
Thank you. And in all seriousness, policy improves from dissent. So like it's not like I keep doing what you're doing because it makes it better.
Thank you.
Jim, can I chime in just real quick?
Yeah, go ahead, please, Emily.
I just want to kind of echo what you just said because I'm sitting here and I know I've been a little quiet through the conversation, but I'm listening to the questions that are coming in and the additional clarification that comes with those questions, and that's been really helpful. The reason why I voted in support of this is because staff are always really great at keeping the board informed about what's going on. So even though I don't have everything in front of me in writing, I know that since this won't be implemented until next fall, that gives staff a lot of time to come back and help iron out the details. And I trust that staff will do a good job with that. So, but I do appreciate the dissenting votes and the questions that have come from the conversation. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I want to specifically add that one of the things that I carry in my head in this work is in this cool region we have is that when Grays Harbor County does well, the region's doing well, and we all need to give Grays Harbor County love. So, okay. Thank you. Let's, Jeff, let's move through our reports. I'm going to hand it to you and keep us moving through your directors in hopefully in 15 minutes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. And yeah, I appreciate the detailed discussion we had, and we at staff will certainly work closely with the board as this on any next steps. And just because it sounds like we need to clarify exactly what implementation, what we're talking about. So we will do that in the coming months. So you've already heard enough from me. I'm gonna just hand it off here momentarily. Just wanted to acknowledge that that Odell, Dan and I had a great day in Port Angeles in October. Odell, to get the nephelometer working, maybe she'll say something about that. But Dan and I had some great meetings with Clallam County Board of Health and also with the Port of Port Angeles. So again, just a reminder that these meetings to get us out, meeting with your colleagues, if there's groups in your communities that you think it would be helpful for us to meet with, please keep us in mind. And again, just thank you, Mike French, for that invitation to meet with the Board of Health. I think that was we had a lot of good questions, a lot of good discussion at that meeting. So with that, I'm just gonna actually hand it off to Debbie to give a brief update on the database, because that's a really exciting project that the agency's invested a lot of time and effort in, and it's going really well. So Debbie.
Thanks. I just want to say that I'm very excited to work with the contractor that we chose, this Unicon. They're really good to work with. Jen and I have been attending the trainings on the modules. They've got several different modules to be working on. And depending on which module we're working on, we'll be inviting different staff in as needed. On a weekly basis, Chris, Jen, and I have been meeting with Unicon to touch base and see how things are progressing, checking out on trainings, how they're going, and they've been asking which staff we've been working with. Chris continues to work with the IT guy to get the platform set up. We had a little bit of hiccups, but I think it's going well at this point. Let's see, Jen and I are working on determining which data we actually want to bring over from our old database, because there's a lot of information there that's past its retention schedule, expired, a lot of additional information we probably don't need. So we'll be working with them on that. We did send them a copy of our database so that they kind of have an idea of what we have. And then Jen and I will be working with them, walking them actually through our current database so that we can kind of mesh term-wise and information-wise, so that our staff understands what we're talking about, because they use a lot of different terms. As for a timeline, originally they were talking probably late summer to get our internal database up and running. We are going to get an update tomorrow. The timeline might have changed. We're not sure yet. So we're looking at late summer, and the initial thing will be an internal database, and then we're going to be working, once staff's really comfortable with the database, then we'll work with probably one of our AOP sources to open it up to our regulated sources. So they'll be able to come in, upload permits, they can update their own information, it'll make it a little bit easier for our staff. And then the final phase will be opening it up to the public so they can actually do what they're doing now, complaints, asbestos permits and whatnot. That's it.
Great. So it's exciting, and Debbie has been very she's been involved and also been a little skeptical, I think, after many years of the agency not doing anything on a database. So to see Debbie excited about this and looking forward to the meeting with the contractors is, I think, a real win for the agency.
That's cool.
Okay, so now I think to Mike.
I'll make it real quick. Two items. And one, I missed this last month and I should have brought it up, but kudos goes to a source in Olympia, Georgia Pacific. They're a corrugated paper manufacturer. They had a fire a while back, and where ORCAA has if you look at the violation sheet in the packet, a lot of times the violations out there for sources are because they didn't get a permit before they built the equipment or built what they're supposed to. This facility, environmental person knows the rules. He called us while they were still putting out the fire. And once everybody got out, of course, and said, hey, we've got a fire going on. We're gonna have to replace this, this, and this. What kind of permits do we need? What kind of asbestos permits, demo, and what do we need for NSR to get a new operating permit for our new equipment? That's kind of unheard of. And that guy went above and beyond to call even while the fire was going on, to find out, hey, I know we're gonna need some permits, what do we do? So kudos to them, and I'm sorry I missed it last month. The second thing I had was just real quick, PNWRE, that was the big case, we had pellet mill in Hoquiam. That case went on for a long time, and just let you know, we posted on our website that they've asked for an extension to build our rules say within 18 months of the permit, you have an ability, you have to start construction. Of course, they haven't started construction because it's been tied up in an appeal. We're waiting for that decision. They're gonna pass their 18 months, so we gave them another 18-month extension. So, and that's just, I wanna let you know on that one, and that's on our website. I won't go over anything else.
Okay.
Okay, so I think to Odell.
Okay, Dan, can you throw the slides up? So short monitoring report this month, for October. Next slide. So mostly green, so we've been seeing a lot of good air quality at most of our stations. You'll see a few extra stations up there, and those represent our Sensuas that we've installed. Forks, we had one moderate day, ORCAA, one moderate day. The sensor was having some communication problems, but we've replaced that sensor. And so far, communication has been really good. So hopeful that we now have all three of our Sensuas operating. And yeah, pretty much good air quality in the month of October. Next slide. So updates on Pahok's Peak, the Encore and Improve updates. You'll remember we had the site in, we put power in, and then we had to move the trailers because they were doing some tank removal and soil cleanup. They didn't finish the project, but they have stopped for the year. So we moved the trailers back over to Pahok's Peak. We've reconnected power. Almost all the instruments are operating, which is great, but we have also a new data logging software system. I don't know if you remember, we've implemented it at Lacey. Pahok's Peak is a much more complicated site, and so we do have some parameters are reporting data, but not all, so we're not fully functional. The improved site is functional, and the Macaw have started collecting filter samples again. Their stuff is much easier. So yeah, that was done earlier in last week. Did I go last week to do
Yeah,
that?
that was just last
So
week.
then one other note on that is that next spring we will have to take the site down and move it again and have it offline for about a month when the Army Corps of Engineers comes back and finishes the soil cleanup project. So this time when we put them back, we left the tires on and we did it in such a way knowing that we were gonna have to move them. So it's more portable. So that's where we're at with that one. Next slide. Other updates. I did go to Port Angeles, as Jeff mentioned, to replace the nephelometer. That site's up. Shelton Quarterly QC. That's a quality check that has to happen every 3 months at all of our sites. Sorry, I usually write that out, Jeff. And then also monthly visits to the new Lacey site for the BAM and the ethylometer quality checks. Those are not every 3 months, those are every month. We did remove the seasonal ozone monitors and working on getting the continuous ozone monitor to talk to the new software. So that is, I've actually taken that monitor over to Ecology so they could work with it and try to figure out how to get it talking. And then there was a sensor that went out in the works unit. So we repaired that and also replaced and repaired the Senswa unit in Yelm. And I think that is all I have. Yes, so that is all I have for monitoring, very quick. Unless there are questions, hand it over to Tyson.
Dan.
Dan, sorry, Dan.
Let me get my audio on, sorry. Real quick, I'm going to talk about burning some more. Wood stove burning. We did get, I think I mentioned last month that the state had agreed to provide funding for our wood stove replacement and recycling awards. Took some time, but I think Friday last week, Jeff signed the contract and we're good to go. I've been accepting applications. We've got vendor agreements. Again, that's open for replacement in all of our counties except for Pacific. Frankly, their air is too good, and the state let me know kind of offline that if we tried to push the replacement program in Pacific County, it would bring our score down too far. So we do have the recycle award in Pacific County, so all 6 counties people can take their wood stove in, get $500 just to take it to a metal scrapper. But this time, for the first time ever, our other 5 counties, all counties, the entire countywide program, they can do replacement of an old uncertified wood stove with natural gas, propane, to get $750. If they replace it with pellet or electric fireplace heating system, they can get $1,000. And if they want to put in a heat pump, ducted or ductless, they can get $2,200. And we've also included a low income component, so we can kick that up to up to $5,000 for qualified income addresses. And so we're working with some partners and getting those. Some agencies like Jefferson PUD. I've been talking to some of the folks at Thurston County and Habitat to try to get their support to do the income verification for us, so we're not having to do that in-house. But I think we've got the tools. If we do need to do the income verification in-house, we can do that. So I would encourage you to please use the news you can use. That's part of my report on your social media. Share it with your social media teams. Let them know about that. That's part of keeping our advertising costs low or no cost. So the more we can get you sharing our social media, the lower our costs for outreach are. I think that's the big stuff I wanted to cover. Yeah, I will note we did have one of our weekly blog posts and social media posts picked up by the Jolt here in Thurston County, covering asbestos and demolition notification requirements for storm cleanup especially. And so the Jolt shared that and has been helpful in getting that word out. And then just a quick follow-up on what Mike mentioned about Georgia Pacific. That's something we're going to promote and share in our social channels as well. And we want to launch not quite sure what the actual title will be, but I'm calling it the Businesses Taking Care of Air Award, and just really recognizing businesses that are doing good by our air quality.
Okay, I'm gonna wrap it up here. Got 4 minutes. So open enrollment started the 1st of November. That will be running through December 5th. Other than premium costs increasing around 12%, all of the plan benefits have remained the same for staff. I'm gonna be pushing back our policy review, and that's due to my jury duty absence, which was about 3 weeks. I expect to have a briefing memo prepared for our December board meeting and a proposed resolution for our January board meeting, ready to be reviewed and approved. And also on the building operations and maintenance side, unfortunately, we have a tenant who she won't be renewing her lease come this January. And she will actually be leaving us in August of next year. So we'll have 3 open spaces. We reduced the rent for space 103 to $1,095. Very little interest, some interest, but still no bites. And that's gonna do it for me.
Okay, thank you all. Any questions for staff? Anything for good of the order? Okay, so just a reminder then to let Debbie or Jeff know if you're able to make it in December for the in-person meeting, lunch, and the trip out to Lacey. And then for me, my last city council meeting will be December 16th. If any of you from the staff or the board would like to come, I'd love to see you there. It'll start at 6 p.m. So with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.